The night before my wedding, my fiancé spent the night with her first love. It was raining. Hard. The kind of rain that drowns out everything, the sounds of the city, the voices in your head, and the pain in your heart. But nothing could silence the storm raging inside me. I stood outside a dimly lit hotel, gripping the velvet box in my pocket. The engagement ring inside felt heavier than ever, like a cruel joke played on me by fate. A part of me wished I hadn't seen it, hadn't seen her stepping into that building, laughing as she clung to him. But I had. And now, there was no turning back. I had followed a hunch, a tiny crack in her perfectly composed smile when she kissed me goodbye at the bachelorette party. A crack that widened when I noticed her phone screen light up with a name she had sworn was in the past, Paul. Curiosity? Or maybe it was the instincts of a man who had spent years being overlooked, always fearing that he wasn't enough. I had taken a cab, trailing behind hers, hoping, praying, that I was wrong. That she had nothing to hide. But she did. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw them. Together. His arms around her waist. Her lips on his. It wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was passion. Desire. Love. I took a shaky breath, my fingers tightening around the box in my pocket. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I wanted to scream, to storm in there and demand an explanation. But what was the point? I had always been second to him. Even when he had been nothing more than a memory, he had been first in her heart. I turned away, walking through the pouring rain, the engagement ring slipping from my fingers and falling onto the wet pavement with a soft, insignificant clink. The symbol of a future that had never truly been mine. Before leaving, I pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled, but I typed the message anyway and posted it where the whole world could see, wishing you two get back together soon. I'm stepping aside for you. The moment I hit send, my phone vibrated. Her name flashed on the screen, Laura. I let it ring. And ring. And ring. Then I answered. Richard. Her voice was frantic. Where are you? What's wrong with you? What is this post? I exhaled sharply, the cold air burning my lungs. Now you care? After you spent the night with Paul? It was just one night. I didn't want any regrets. Can't you stop being so old-fashioned, she snapped, her voice laced with irritation, like I was the problem. I laughed bitterly. You're right, Laura. I am old-fashioned. And now, you're not my fiancé anymore. Silence. Then, panic. Richard, wait, I hung up. A love that was never mine, I was numb as I walked away. The neon lights of the city blurred together, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alone. I had given Laura 7 years of my life. 7 years of chasing, of proving, of believing that if I just tried hard enough, she would love me the way I loved her. But I was never him. Laura and I met in college. She was the beauty of the Chinese department, and I was just a nameless guy among the masses. But she had been kind to me when no one else was. Everyone called me a jinx. My father had died in a construction accident when I was little. My mother worked herself to death trying to support me. Then my grandmother, the only family I had left, passed away when I was 10. I was sent to an orphanage, where the whispers followed me everywhere, he's cursed. Anyone close to him dies. Stay away, or you'll be next. For years, I lived in the shadows, until she stepped into my life. Laura. She stood up for me at a party when a group of guys was mocking me. She looked at me, straight into my eyes, and said, "Don't listen to them. None of this is your fault. You deserve everything good in this world." That night, I fell for her. Hard. But she had Paul. Paul, who was rich, charming, and everything I wasn't. Paul, who left her to study abroad in sophomore year, shattering her heart. And me? I was there to pick up the pieces. I chased after her for 5 years before she finally accepted me. I thought I had one. But love isn't something you win. The truth was, I had never been more than a placeholder. I closed my eyes, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. My notifications were blowing up. People were already talking. Friends, family, even strangers who had no business in our lives. Did Richard really call off the wedding? What happened? Did Laura cheat? No way. I exhaled. I had no energy to deal with any of it. I just wanted to disappear. Then my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Laura. It was her parents. A family with no shame. I wasn't surprised. I had expected them. The moment they heard the wedding was off, they would come running, not out of concern for me, but because of appearances. I answered, and her mother's shrill voice filled my ears. Richard. What nonsense is this? You canceled the wedding? Just like that? We've already booked everything. Do you want to humiliate us in front of all our friends and family? I chuckled darkly. Maybe you should ask your daughter why the wedding is off. There was a pause. Then her father spoke, his voice laced with condescension. Listen, son. Our Laura has been with you for years. Marrying her is your good fortune. You should be grateful. I clenched my teeth. Grateful? Grateful that she cheated on me the night before our wedding? I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Take a good look at the wonderful daughter you're defending. I sent them a picture. A screenshot from Laura's social media, a post she had made after sleeping with Paul. No matter how much time passes, you're the one I always loved but could never have. I've finally given myself to you. Now, I belong to you. Silence. Then her mother scoffed. It was just one night. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? I laughed in disbelief. You're serious? You think I should just pretend it didn't happen? Of course. It's not like she doesn't love you, Richard. It was just a mistake. A moment of weakness. I ran a hand through my soaked hair, my body trembling with rage. If it was just a moment of weakness, why did she say she belongs to him? Why did she sleep with him the night before marrying me? Her father sighed. Richard, think rationally. If you stay quiet, Laura can still marry you. I inhaled sharply, a slow smile creeping onto my face. They thought I was weak. They thought I would accept this. But they were wrong. I glanced at the hotel one last time before walking away. The show had just begun. I walked away from the hotel, the rain soaking through my clothes, but I barely felt it. My mind was too busy replaying the night's events. Every laugh, every touch, every lingering look between Laura and Paul, it was like a movie I couldn't turn off. I thought I had seen the worst of it. I was wrong. By the time I got home, my phone was still vibrating non-stop. Missed calls. Texts. Social media notifications piling up like a ticking time bomb. Laura hadn't stopped calling since I walked away. Her messages ranged from desperate pleas to outright fury. Richard, please. Don't do this. We can fix it. It didn't mean anything. You're overreacting. You're humiliating me. Do you want everyone to laugh at me? I scoffed. Humiliation? That was her biggest concern? I tossed my phone on the couch and stared at the ceiling. My body felt drained, but my mind was racing. What now? What was I supposed to do with all this pain? Then another call came in. This time, I picked up. Richard. It was Mike, my best friend and business partner. His voice was calm, but I could hear the tension beneath it. I just saw your post. What the hell happened? I exhaled slowly. Laura happened. A pause. Then, tell me everything. So I did. I told him about following my gut, about seeing them together, about Laura's pathetic excuses. Mike listened quietly until I finished. Then he sighed heavily. Damn. I knew she wasn't the best match for you, but this? He let out a low whistle. You okay? I let out a dry laugh. No. But I will be. Good. He hesitated, then added, you need to be ready for what's coming. I frowned. What do you mean? Laura's parents. The wedding guests. Your mutual friends. They're going to come after you, Richard. You just humiliated their golden girl. I clenched my jaw. They can say whatever they want. I'm done. I believe you. But will they let you be done? I didn't answer. The storm breaks by morning, the news had spread. Laura had gone full damage control, spinning a new narrative. Suddenly, she was the victim, heartbroken, confused, abandoned by a cold, irrational fiancé. Her social media was flooded with sympathy messages. Poor Laura, she must be devastated. I heard Richard just left her without an explanation. How cruel. Men are all the same. Throw away years of love over one mistake. I gritted my teeth. One mistake? One mistake wasn't sleeping with another man the night before our wedding. One mistake wasn't choosing him over me after everything I had given her. Then came the calls from her parents. I ignored them at first, but eventually, I had to answer. Richard. What is this nonsense? Her mother shrieked. Why are you making such a big scene? Just talk to Laura and fix this. There's nothing to fix, I said coldly. The wedding is off. Richard, don't be a fool. Her father cut in. You two have been together for years. Don't throw it all away over some silly misunderstanding. She cheated on me, I snapped. How is that a misunderstanding? Oh, stop being so dramatic. It was one night, her mother huffed. Paul was her first love. She needed closure. That's all. Closure? I clenched my fist so tightly my nails dug into my palm. And did she tell you that she wrote, "Now I belong to you" to him after she slept with him? Silence. Then her father said, Richard, be reasonable. A woman like Laura doesn't come around often. She chose you over Paul once, didn't she? That means something. I laughed bitterly. No, it doesn't. It just means Paul wasn't around at the time. Look, son, I'm not your son. And I'm done talking about this. I hung up. Minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Laura. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me wanted to hear what she had to say. Richard, she started, her voice shaking. You're making a mistake. You're acting like a child. A child? I repeated, barely holding back my rage. Laura, you cheated on me the night before our wedding. Then you lied to everyone and made yourself the victim. You don't get to call me childish. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking clearly. That's funny, because your messages to Paul seemed pretty clear. Silence. Richard, please, she whispered. I don't want to lose you. A part of me wanted to believe her. A tiny, foolish part. But I knew better. You lost me the moment you chose him. I hung up, cutting her off for good. No looking back. By the end of the week, the wedding was officially called off. The venue was cancelled. The invitations were pointless. The future Laura and I had planned, gone, just like that. It should have hurt more. But all I felt was relief. I was finally free. I packed up the last of Laura's things and left them outside her apartment. I didn't bother seeing her again. There was nothing left to say. Mike and I grabbed beers at our favorite bar that night. As we clinked bottles, he smirked. To new beginnings. I smiled for the first time in days. To new beginnings. But something told me Laura wasn't finished yet. And I was right. Because just when I thought it was over, the real storm began. The peace I thought I had gained was short-lived. The real storm was just beginning. It started subtly, the way a small crack in a dam eventually gives way to a flood. Laura wasn't ready to let go, and neither was her family. Their pride had been shattered, their daughter's reputation at stake, and in their eyes, I was the villain who had left her heartbroken. At first, I ignored it. The whispers, the rumors, the pointed stares. The social media posts painting me as a heartless man who had thrown away years of love over one mistake. But then, things escalated. One morning, as I stepped out of my apartment, I found my car vandalized. Red spray paint across the windshield, cheater. I stood frozen, my breath fogging up in the cold air. My mind raced, trying to process it. Cheater? Me? A few neighbors peeked out from their windows, whispering among themselves. I clenched my jaw, feeling a mixture of anger and disbelief. The irony of it all was almost laughable. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture. I had a pretty good idea who was behind it, but I needed proof. With a deep breath, I walked back inside and called Mike. "Damn, man. This is getting out of hand," he said after I sent him the picture. "You think?" I sighed, rubbing my temples. Laura won't stop. And her parents? They're enabling this. They're making me out to be the bad guy. They're desperate. Their daughter went from the perfect bride-to-be to the woman who got dumped at the altar, Mike said. You need to get ahead of this before it ruins your reputation. He was right. I had spent years building my business, making a name for myself. If Laura continued spreading lies, it wouldn't be long before clients hesitated to work with me. So, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit back and take it. Exposing the truth. If Laura and her family wanted to play dirty, I would fight back with the truth. I gathered every piece of evidence I had. The screenshots of Laura's texts to Paul. The pictures she had posted right after their night together. The recording of her parents trying to convince me to stay quiet. Then, I made my move. A carefully worded post on social media, accompanied by proof. Nothing dramatic, nothing bitter. Just the truth. There are two sides to every story. Here's mine. It didn't take long for the post to go viral. People love a scandal, but they love a plot twist even more. The tide turned. Sympathy shifted. Comments flooded in. Damn. Laura played the victim this whole time? Why didn't you speak up sooner, Richard? We all thought you abandoned her. This is messed up. She literally slept with another guy the night before the wedding. It wasn't just strangers talking. People from our college days, mutual friends, even acquaintances who barely knew us started chiming in. It didn't take long before the backlash hit Laura hard. Her social media went silent. Her parents, who had been so vocal before, suddenly disappeared from the conversation. I thought that would be the end of it. But then, the unexpected happened. Laura showed up at my door. A desperate plea. I hesitated before opening the door. The last thing I wanted was another confrontation, but a part of me needed to hear what she had to say. When I did open it, I barely recognized her. She looked tired. Hollow. As if she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged, her clothes wrinkled as if she had just thrown them on. Richard, she whispered. Can we talk? I didn't invite her in. Say what you need to say. She swallowed hard, looking anywhere but at me. I made a mistake. I know that now. I don't know why I did it. I was scared. I thought I was losing myself. I didn't know what I wanted, but now I do. I want you. I stared at her, stunned by her words. Was she serious? After everything she had done, after publicly humiliating me, after trying to destroy my reputation, she wanted me back? Laura, I said, keeping my voice steady. It's too late. She reached for my hand, her grip desperate. Please, Richard. I love you. I always have. I pulled away. No. You loved the idea of me. The safety I provided. The fact that I would always be there, chasing after you, proving myself. But I'm done. Tears filled her eyes. We can fix this. We can't. And we won't. She let out a choked sob. So that's it? You're just going to walk away? I nodded. Just like you did that night. Her face crumbled, and for the first time, I saw genuine regret. But regret wasn't enough. I closed the door. And with that, I shut the last remaining piece of our past. Moving on in the weeks that followed, the dust began to settle. The gossip died down. People moved on to new scandals. Laura, once the center of attention, faded into the background. And me? I finally started living for myself. I focused on work. Spent time with friends. Even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing someone who would never truly be mine. One evening, as I sat in my office overlooking the city, my phone buzzed. A message from Mike. So, when are you finally going to meet my sister? I chuckled, shaking my head. Maybe it was time to take a chance on something new. Maybe, just maybe, I was ready for my own happy ending. But this time, with someone who actually deserved me. Just when I thought my life had finally returned to normal, another unexpected turn awaited me. A month had passed since Laura's last desperate attempt to reconcile. Her presence had gradually faded from my life, but I had underestimated her. Some people don't let go that easily, especially when their pride is at stake. One evening, I was going over some business reports in my office when Mike barged in, his face tense. Richard, have you checked the news? I frowned. No, why? He tossed his phone on my desk. The screen displayed a live news broadcast. The headline made my blood run cold. Prominent businessman Paul Becker arrested for fraud and embezzlement. Paul. Laura's first love. The man she had thrown away everything for. I stared at the screen as the footage played, Paul being led away in handcuffs, his usual arrogance replaced by a look of sheer panic. Turns out Mr. Golden Boy wasn't as clean as he seemed, Mike muttered. Apparently, he was running a scheme for years. The police finally caught up with him. I exhaled slowly. This was big. It meant that Laura's so-called perfect life was about to crumble along with Paul's empire. And there's more, Mike added, hesitating. Laura's name is being mentioned too. I snapped my gaze to him. What? She wasn't just Paul's fiancée. She was involved in his business. Whether she knew what was happening or not, people are asking questions. I leaned back in my chair, processing. Laura had fought so hard to keep Paul, to prove she had made the right choice. Now, the world was watching her fall. A visit from the past. The next day, I received an unexpected visitor. Laura stood at my doorstep, looking like a shadow of her former self. Gone were the designer clothes and the confident smile. Instead, she was pale, exhausted, and on the verge of breaking. Richard. I didn't know where else to go. I crossed my arms. What do you want, Laura? She wrung her hands, avoiding my gaze. You've seen the news. You know what happened to Paul. Yeah, I saw. And? She looked up, her eyes brimming with desperation. I had nothing to do with it, I swear. But people think I was involved. I've lost everything, Richard. My friends, my reputation. I don't know what to do. I studied her. Was she telling the truth? Or was this just another attempt to manipulate me? What do you expect me to do about it, Laura? I asked, my voice calm but firm. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was wrong. I was so wrong about everything. I should have never left you. I should have. I held up a hand, cutting her off. Don't rewrite history. You didn't leave me, Laura. You betrayed me. And now you want my help? She shook her head rapidly. Not help. Just someone to believe me. To tell me I'm not a terrible person. I sighed. I don't hate you, Laura. But I also don't trust you. And I'm not going to save you from this. You need to figure that out on your own. She searched my face for any sign of softness, but there was none left. The Richard she had once controlled was gone. Finally, she nodded. I understand. Then, with one last hollow look, she turned and walked away. A new beginning. That was the last time I saw Laura. A few weeks later, the scandal fully erupted. Paul was sentenced to prison, and Laura's name was permanently tainted. She tried to rebuild her life, but without the support and luxury she once had, she faded into obscurity. And me? I moved on. I focused on growing my business, on surrounding myself with people who genuinely cared about me. And one day, I found something, or rather, someone, worth my time. Mike's sister, Emily. She was nothing like Laura. Where Laura had been high maintenance and manipulative, Emily was kind, patient, and full of life. Our connection was effortless, untainted by the ghosts of the past. One evening, as we walked along the riverside, I turned to her and smiled. You know, I never thought I'd be here again. She tilted her head. Here? As in dating? I nodded. As in happy. She squeezed my hand. Life has a funny way of surprising us. I chuckled. Yeah. I just hope the surprises from now on are good ones. She grinned. I think they will be. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Because this time, I wasn't chasing a fantasy. I was living in reality. And it felt damn good. Years passed. The storm that once surrounded my life had long since faded, replaced by the quiet hum of contentment. My business had flourished, my friendships had grown stronger, and most importantly, I had found peace. I had also found love, a love that was real, steady, and built on trust. Emily and I had built a life together. A home, a family. She was my rock, my safe place, everything Laura had never been. And for the first time in years, I no longer looked back. The scars of the past were just that, the past. Until one day, a ghost from that past reappeared. An unexpected encounter. I was walking through the city, my daughter's tiny hand gripping mine as we explored the park. It was one of those rare, perfect afternoons, clear skies, laughter in the air, and not a single thought of the past in my mind. And then I saw her. Laura. She was sitting alone on a park bench, staring at nothing. Her once pristine appearance was gone. There was no expensive handbag at her side, no designer heels. Just a simple, worn-out dress and tired eyes that looked far older than they should. She looked up. Our eyes met. For a moment, I considered walking past her, pretending she wasn't there. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe closure, made me pause. Daddy, who's that? My daughter asked. I looked down at her innocent face and smiled. Just someone I used to know, sweetheart. She nodded, satisfied, and continued skipping ahead. I turned back to Laura and, for the first time in years, approached her. She blinked up at me, startled. Richard. I nodded. Laura. It's been a while. She let out a hollow chuckle. A lifetime, it feels like. I studied her carefully. How have you been? She shrugged, looking away. Life didn't turn out the way I thought it would. Paul went to prison, my family cut ties with me after the scandal, and, well, here I am. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I just felt nothing. She looked up at me again, her eyes searching. You look happy. I smiled. I am. A small, wistful smile crossed her lips. I'm glad. You deserved better. I wish I had realized what I had before I lost it. I sighed. We all make choices, Laura. And we have to live with them. She nodded slowly, then gestured toward my daughter, who was playing nearby. She's beautiful. You have a good life now. I glanced at my daughter and felt a warmth spread through my chest. Yeah. I do. Laura looked down at her hands, fidgeting. I should go. I didn't stop her. Take care, Laura. She stood up, hesitated for a moment as if she wanted to say something more, but then simply nodded and walked away. And just like that, she was gone. A future without shadows that night, as I sat with Emily on our porch, watching the sunset, I told her about the encounter. She listened, then squeezed my hand. How do you feel? I thought for a moment, then smiled. Light. Like I finally closed the last open door from my past. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Good. Because you deserve to be happy, Richard. I kissed her forehead. I already am. The past had tried to pull me under once, but I had fought my way out. And now? Now, I was free. Because sometimes, life doesn't give you the ending you thought you wanted. It gives you something better.